The first time I ever stepped into an abandoned house, I wasn't chasing thrills or ghost stories. It just happened by accident. I was about 17, walking home from a friend's place on a route I normally didn't take. There was this old road lined with tall weeds and half-collapsed fences, and at the very end sat a house that looked like it had been forgotten for decades. The paint was peeling, the windows were blacked out with grime, and the front porch sagged as if it was tired of holding the weight of time. I don't even know what pulled me toward it. Curiosity, I guess. Some part of me thought I'd just peek inside, maybe find broken furniture or old magazines. I didn't expect anything more than dust and silence. Pushing the door open was easier than I thought. It creaked but didn't resist, almost like it wanted me to come in. The smell hit me first, damp wood, mold, and something faintly metallic. The kind of scent that lingers in basements where water has seeped through for years. The air was cooler inside than outside, and every sound I made, my sneakers against the warped floorboards, the shuffle of my jacket, seemed to echo louder than it should have. At first glance, it looked like any other abandoned place. The wallpaper was peeling in long strips. Furniture sat overturned and broken glass glittered on the floor like frost. A staircase leaned precariously upward, and the living room was cluttered with old picture frames without any photos in them. But the longer I stood there, the more I noticed the stillness. Not the kind of stillness that comes with emptiness, but the kind that feels heavy, like the walls themselves were holding their breath. I walked slowly, half afraid the floor would collapse under me. Every step seemed to stir the silence into something restless. In one of the back rooms, I found a child's toy lying in the corner. A stuffed bear missing one eye, its fur stiff with age. I don't know why, but it unsettled me more than anything else. Seeing something meant for comfort and innocence abandoned here, rotting, gave me a knot in my stomach. The first real moment I felt uneasy was when I heard it. A faint scuff, like a shoe dragging across wood. I froze, listening. Nothing. I told myself it was just the house settling, or maybe something small like a rat. But then it came again, clearer this time, and from upstairs. I held my breath, staring at the staircase. My pulse started pounding in my ears, and every instinct told me to leave. But for some reason, I stayed. Maybe I didn't want to look like a coward, even though no one was there to judge me. I moved quietly into what looked like the kitchen. The counters were covered in dust, but I noticed something strange. 5 jars sitting neatly in a row, clean compared to everything else. They didn't look like they'd been there for long. Inside, each jar held something unidentifiable. One looked like hair, another like marbles, another with rusty nails. The last 2 had dark, cloudy liquids. My throat tightened as I leaned in. Who would leave these here? And why did they look so deliberately placed? The house seemed to breathe around me, the wood groaning softly. I told myself to leave, that I'd seen enough. But before I could turn back, I heard the faint sound of a door shutting upstairs. It wasn't loud, but in that silence it was unmistakable. I should have run right then. I should have bolted out the front door without a second thought. But some part of me wanted to see. Some part of me thought maybe it was just the wind or a loose window. I crept to the bottom of the stairs, my hand hovering over the railing. The air felt colder here, enough to make my skin prickle. Halfway up the steps, I thought I heard whispering. Not words, just a hushed sound that shifted like someone speaking through a wall. I stopped dead, straining my ears, but it faded into nothing. My heart was racing so hard I felt it in my throat. Still, I climbed. The upstairs hallway stretched out, lined with doors on both sides. The carpet was stained and eaten through in patches, and the air smelled faintly of something sour. The first room I peeked into was empty except for a mattress with no sheets, its fabric slashed open. The second had a dresser with its drawers pulled out, clothes spilling onto the floor, but they were old-fashioned, dresses and shirts yellowed with time. When I reached the third room, I froze in the doorway. Inside, the walls were covered with scribbles, dozens, maybe hundreds of them, drawn in thick black marker. Circles, spirals, strange patterns I didn't recognize. Some had been drawn over each other, layered so heavily the plaster beneath cracked. In the middle of the floor lay a single wooden chair, facing the window. The seat was covered in dust, but the floor around it looked disturbed, like someone had been there recently. I don't know how long I stood staring before the sound came again. Footsteps, slow and deliberate, somewhere down the hallway. I snapped my head toward the noise, but the hallway was empty. My skin crawled, and I finally backed away, muttering under my breath that I shouldn't be here. I turned toward the stairs, ready to leave. That's when I noticed something that made my stomach drop. The chair in the scribbled room, the one I'd seen from the doorway, was no longer facing the window. It was facing me. I bolted. I didn't care about being quiet anymore. My footsteps thundered down the stairs and I nearly tripped on the last step. I sprinted through the living room, out the front door, and didn't stop running until I was halfway down the street. Even after I got home, I couldn't shake the feeling that something had followed me. That heavy stillness clung to me like I had carried it back, and for nights afterward, I would wake up certain that I'd heard whispers just outside my door. Like and subscribe if you want me to tell you what happened when I went back to that house the second time, because the first visit wasn't the end of it. The second time I returned to the house, I told myself it was just to prove I hadn't imagined it. Days had passed, but the memory of that chair turning still gnawed at me. I thought maybe I'd exaggerated it in my head. Maybe my nerves had played tricks on me. So one cloudy afternoon I went back. I didn't tell anyone where I was going. I just pulled on a hoodie, kept my hands in my pockets, and walked straight down that overgrown road. The house looked the same, though maybe more decayed in the weak light. The porch sagged a little lower, the windows darker than before. Pushing the door open, the same damp smell wrapped around me, but something felt different this time. The silence wasn't just heavy, it was watchful. I forced myself to walk inside, my shoes crunching over the broken glass. The jars were still on the counter, in the exact same neat row, except one of them was missing. I scanned the counter again to be sure, but where there had been 5, now there were only 4. My chest tightened. I tried to rationalize it, maybe I'd miscounted before. But deep down I knew I hadn't. Someone had been here since my last visit. Someone who touched those jars. I tried to steady my breathing and looked around. That's when I noticed something else. On the floor by the doorway leading to the hall was a small object. I bent down and picked it up, brushing away the dust. My stomach turned cold. It was the missing eye from that stuffed bear I'd seen last time. The sound of a creak came from above me, slow, deliberate, like weight pressing on old wood. My hands shook as I dropped the button eye back to the floor. The stairs loomed ahead, darker than before. And though every instinct screamed at me to leave, my legs carried me forward one slow step at a time. When I reached the top, the hallway seemed longer than I remembered. The air was colder, sharp against my lungs. The room with the scribbles, its door was half closed now, even though last time it had been wide open. I nudged it with my foot, the hinges groaning. Inside, the chair was still there, but it wasn't empty anymore. Someone or something was sitting in it. I couldn't make out the details in the dim light, but I saw the outline of shoulders hunched forward, a head tilted at an unnatural angle. It didn't move, didn't acknowledge me, but I felt its gaze press into me all the same. The whispering started again, louder this time, crawling over the walls. Words I couldn't understand, layered over each other, like voices speaking from the cracks in the plaster. My knees nearly buckled. I stumbled backward into the hallway, my hand slamming against the wall. That's when I noticed the scribbles had spread. They weren't confined to the one room anymore. They trailed out into the hallway, scrawled across the walls, fresh and wet like they'd just been drawn. The figure in the chair shifted, just slightly, enough to let me know it wasn't frozen, enough to let me know it knew I was there. I turned and ran. This time I didn't look back. Down the stairs, across the living room, out the door. But even as I hit the street, even as daylight wrapped around me, I swore I could hear the whispers following me like they had sunk into my skin. That night, when I finally made it home, I slammed the door shut and locked it. I stood there, chest heaving, sweat dripping down my back. Then I saw it, on my kitchen counter, lined up neatly in a row, were 5 jars. Like and subscribe if you want me to tell you what I found inside them, because that was the moment I realized leaving the house hadn't saved me.